Hey folks, it's Tom, your Frugal Prepper. Today we're going to talk a little bit about food storage, prepping, and keto. And what kind of foods can you stock up on that are keto, that you can have some long-term storage with. Alright, so I know a lot of people, their initial reaction to this video is going to be, hey, I'm going to be keto and lose weight and eat healthy, but if the stuff hits the fan, I'll just eat beans and rice, right? And that's an option as long as you're not diabetic, right? So I maintain my blood sugar primarily by eating a ketogenic diet. If I go back to eating rice and carbohydrates, in a very short time, I'm going to be an insulin-dependent diabetic again. And if there's no insulin available, if I can't get those medications, then I'm just going to die pretty quickly when my blood sugar hits 500, right? So it's really important for me to be able to continue to eat keto in a bad situation. All right, so here's some of the things that I've found that I have, and some of this I have in storage, and some of them I just have one of right now, but they're things that I'm going to stock up on. Just for having some options for staying keto in an SHTF situation. So here's like almond flour, and almond flour, you can make a lot of stuff out of this. You can make a nice pizza crust out of this. You can make a faux french fries out of this. So this is really good stuff, and this has a pretty good amount of carbs, or a pretty low amount of carbs. It's 3 grams with 2 grams of fiber per serving. A serving size is 2 tablespoons. So, you know, you depending if you're using a cup of this, you're going to have a little too many carbs. But if you're making a whole pizza and you're just having a slice or two of it, you're going to be fine. So this is a good alternative to traditional flour that you can use. Another thing is the coconut flour. This is also, I have a great recipe to make a faux french fry out of this. This has 9 grams of carbs with 5 grams of fiber, so it's really 4 grams of net carbs per 2 tablespoons. So a little bit higher in carbohydrates than the almond flour, but still definitely within the specifications. I try to stay to 20 grams or less of net carbohydrates per day. This is also nice. This is a keto pancake and waffle mix. This is actually really good, and you only need to mix water with it to make it. And total carbohydrates are 10 grams for a half a cup. So and there's 5 grams of fiber. So you really only have 5 grams left, and only 3 grams of that sugar, and there's 0 added sugars. So, this is really, for half a cup to make a pancake or two, this will actually be very keto and be good. The other thing I have here is Anthem Gum. This, you don't use very much of it at a time, and this is a great thickener. Now, if you don't cook it long enough, it can get kind of stringy and have a weird taste to it, or if you use too much of it. But just using a very little bit of it, you can make a really nice gravy with this. So that's always good to have. Things like mayonnaise. Now, mayonnaise won't store a real long time, but it'll store a year or two on the shelf without any problems. And while this does have soybean oil in it, so it's not necessarily the most anti-inflammatory keto there is, it is definitely low in carbohydrates. It has 0 grams of carbs. So you can have a little bit of mayonnaise once in a while, but you have to kind of limit it because it is soybean oil, which is inflammatory. So keto isn't just carbohydrates, it's an anti-inflammatory diet kind of too. Some people take that more seriously than others. I primarily just watch my carbohydrates, and I don't worry too much about the inflammatory oils, but if I can't avoid them, I will. But a little bit of mayonnaise, I think, is great, and you can mix that, say, with some tuna or some chicken, which is another thing that you can stock up on. Little cans of chicken and tuna, and then you have a nice little, salad. You put a little garlic powder, a little onion powder, a little mayonnaise, and you got a nice chicken or tuna salad that you can have. So I think this is good. Another thing that I like to have on hand is these Vienna sausages. This is a good source of some protein. It has 1 gram of carbohydrate, but there is 12 servings in this whole package. So really 2 servings per can. So there's a couple grams of carbohydrates in these. And they do actually have some potato in them, I do believe. Or maybe it's just dextrose. And the potatoes were in the Spam. But there is some carbs in these, so you have to be kind of careful. You can't just eat a whole bunch of them. But they're good. They're high in salt, which is good for you. And they taste fine. So that's always an option. Now, the other thing here is whole milk. Now, whole milk actually has quite a few carbohydrates in it. It actually has 11 grams in 1 cup. So that's over half your carbs for the day to drink this as milk. But what you can do is mix this with a little bit of vinegar and then strain it through some cheesecloth. And you can make some faux mozzarella cheese out of this if you can't get fresh cheese at the store. So I keep this because my family drinks milk. I don't normally drink milk. If I'm out of cream, I might put a little bit in my coffee, right? You know, I keep it for them, but I could make some faux cheese out of this if I needed to. It's not really, it's real cheese. It's just not quite mozzarella cheese, but it tastes a lot like mozzarella cheese. The other thing here I have is some canned beef. You know, this is a much cheaper way to get your meat is to can it yourself, and it'll stay good. I've eaten these like after they've been on the shelf 5 years, and they still are fine. As long as they're sealed, they'll be fine. And canning meat is super easy to do. You can find all kinds of videos on YouTube on how to can meat. I will post a link to my video on how to can meat up here. But really super easy to do. And you can can all kinds of meat. This is chicken. Oh no, this is turkey. This is turkey, right? But you can can chicken, any kinds of meat. Also pickles. You know, these are some pickles that Oh How Happy Gardener gave me this year that I sliced up, made pickles out of, or some cucumbers I sliced up and made pickles out of. So pickles have like 0 carbohydrates in them if they're just dill pickles. Now bread and butter pickles and sweet pickles are a whole different story. They're going to have lots of carbohydrate. This is not an approved recipe, however I do it all the time. These are my dogs and broth, so some hot dogs and some chicken broth, and I can those. I kind of make like a little Vienna sausage, but it gives you a way to store some meat pretty cheap. It's up to you whether you want to do that. I've never had a problem doing this, but it's not an approved recipe, so I don't really cover how I do it on YouTube. Again, celery, not an approved recipe. It's approved as an ingredient, but there is no approved recipe on how to can it by itself, so that's up to you, but I do can it, and I've never had any problems doing it. So, you know, I keep plenty of celery on hand. It's a very low carb option as well. Things like canned chili. Now this is a premium chili. It doesn't have beans in it. It's Cincinnati style chili. And this one is relatively low in carbohydrates. It has 5 grams with 2 grams of fiber. And so that gives you 3 grams, and the servings per container are 2. So that means there's 6 grams of net carbs in this whole can of chili. And that is pretty good. Now, here's another can of chili that's going to end up going to the food pantry. But you would read this at first and you'd be like, oh, it's only got 2 grams of carbohydrates, right? And it's really because there's another can, the same brand right beside on the shelf that's with beans, and it has like 23 grams of carbohydrates or something. You're like, oh, this is only 2, this is better. But you have to look at the serving size, because while the other can had 1 serving per can, right, this has 2 grams minus nothing. So it's two actual grams of carbohydrates, and there's 24 servings per can. So that's 48 grams of carbohydrates in this 1 gram of chili. That's nearly 3 days worth of carbohydrates on a keto diet. So if you were going to eat something like this, you need to eat it just 1 spoonful at a time, right? But something like this is a much better choice. And you wonder, like, it doesn't say with beans, but it doesn't say no beans, because the second ingredient on here is beans. So it has water, it has beans, modified food starch, that's carbohydrates, chili powder, chili pepper, spices, tomato paste, salt, vinegar, and sugar. So it has sugar added. So that's a lot of these chilies and hot dog sauces these days do have tons of sugar and food starch in them. So that's not, you always want to be careful, look at the carbohydrates, look at the servings per can. But that can be deceptive, and that'll throw you straight out of ketosis if you eat that. Where this, you can stay on track and have a half a can at a time. Oyster shower sauce is a nice condiment. I should get a couple extra things of these. You can put it on your meat and put it in different things. And it really has 1 gram of carb for 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon is usually all you need. Just a few drops of that's enough. This is a Basil Pesto. It's really good. You get it at the Dollar Tree. It has 7 grams of carbs and 1 gram of fiber, so there's 6 grams of carbs in here. And the serving size is a 1/4 cup, though. So you can put a spoonful of this on something, and there's hardly any grams in it. It does have 1 gram of added sugar, though, so it does have some sugar added to it, but still, this with a small spoonful or half a spoonful on a sandwich or something, this is going to fall well within your keto. Make a nice little garnish. Pizza sauce. Now, this is just the lowest carbohydrate pizza sauce I could find. It's 3 grams minus a gram for dietary fiber, so that makes it 2 grams. And there's 6 servings per container, so a serving size is a 1/4 cup, which is enough for a small pizza. And you can make a keto pizza crust. Keto that. And you could take your milk, put some vinegar in it, and run it through some cheesecloth and make some cheese. You could take a little bit of, well, I don't know if I have it up here right now, but I have hamburger that's canned. So you could take some canned hamburger, sprinkle that around there, and you could make you a pizza out of what you have here. Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's actually really good for keto. It's a fermented food, which is really good. It helps your gut heal. It helps you grow healthy gut bacteria. And it has 1 gram of carbohydrate. And there's 13 servings per container. A lot of this actually says 0 grams. I don't know why this one says 1 gram. It doesn't have any added sugars. But very low in carbohydrates and actually very good for your gut. So sauerkraut is a good thing on keto. Then olives. Olives are like a keto freebie. There's no grams of carbohydrates in here at all. You can eat as many of these as you want to. They're a complete freebie on keto. Always check and make sure, like some of the weird flavors of pickled olives and stuff might have some carbs, but most olives carbohydrate free. Green beans, I always get the French style because they're kind of cut up and they remove the beans in the middle, or if they do get one in there, you can pick it out because the white beans that grow in the middle of your bean are actually pretty high in carbs, but the green bean part is not. This has 4 grams of carbs with 2 grams of fiber, so 2 net grams of carbs, and there's 3.5 servings in this 1 can, but still really low in carbohydrates. Of course, your chicken or tuna. Chicken broth or beef broth, these are important to have on hand. You can mix them with some celery and maybe some mushrooms and some different stuff and make mushrooms are another thing you can have that are really low in carbohydrates that are really actually very good for your gut bacteria. But maybe mix some mushrooms and some celery, some beef broth, and some chicken, some canned chicken, and make kind of a chickeny soup. So broth is important. Plus broth is good if you're fasting, just to have a cup of chicken broth, just to kind of help make it feel like you ate something. Put a little onion powder in there or garlic powder, some salt, some chicken broth. Have a nice big bowl of it. It doesn't have any effect on your fasting, and it actually kind of makes it help it feel like you ate something if you get those hunger pangs. Of course, some oils. This is avocado oil. Now, lard, I actually would have lard up here, except I just used my last thing of lard, so I need to get some more to have on hand. But lard is shelf stable. That's primarily what I cook with. leftover bacon grease and stuff like that too. But this is just stuff I had on the shelf right now. And I do use avocado oil sparingly, occasionally, and coconut oil as well. That's another thing I'll use pretty sparingly. Just because I'd rather have an animal-based oil than a vegetable-based oil. But these are okay on keto, you know. Some coffee. So coffee is something, you know, you can just have coffee making your coffee pot. These are little instant packs. But, you know, coffee is something that you can have. You could put a little bit of milk in it and a little bit of some type of artificial sweetener if you want to. I personally use Splenda, but a lot of people don't like Splenda. But, you know, whatever artificial sweetener you use that has no carbohydrates in it will be fine. And you can make a cup of coffee. And last thing here is salt. I use Redmond's Real Salt as my staple salt. It's really good stuff. This is a little 10-pound bucket of Redmond's Real Salt. But, you know, always keep extra salt on hand. Salt's important. And yes, you can use just regular iodized table salt, but you're better off to use an actual sea salt because it's going to have a lot of extra minerals and stuff in it that's good for you. And it just tastes better too. Like once you use Redmond's Real Salt, if you go back and you're at a restaurant or something, you use table salt, you keep putting more on there. Like it just doesn't taste salty. It doesn't taste good. It's because that stuff's crap, and this is real salt. So it comes from like a prehistoric mine or something underground. But that's really good stuff. So I recommend keeping plenty of that on hand. A couple other quick things here is this organic unsweetened ketchup. 2 carbohydrates for a tablespoon. So you can have a little bit of that. There's no added sugars, but 1 gram of that is sugars. So, you know, the point behind knowing what the sugars are, those are going to turn into sugar in your blood very quickly. So, but you can have a little bit of that as a garnish for something, which I think is important. Another thing that I'll eat once in a while, again, peanut oil is not the best oil to have, but peanut butter is pretty good, and you can have, you know, there's 14 servings, so you can have 2 tablespoons for 8 grams of carbohydrates minus 2 grams for dietary fiber, so 6 grams of carbs. You can have 2 spoonfuls of peanut butter. Can make a nice little snack or something there once in a while. And it's relatively high in protein, although it is plant protein, so it's not real protein. And it would be better if you got the natural peanut butter that didn't have sugar added. And this is also going to have hydrogenated soybean oil in it. So not the best choice of peanut butter, but this is the kind that I like. So that's what I got. But a natural peanut butter would be a little bit better. But leave me a comment down below if there's other things you can think of. And I'm looking for like things that don't require refrigeration or freezing. I mean, I have plenty of stuff in the freezer and refrigerator for just like, oh, I lost my job kind of prepping. But for SHTF type prepping, I have to assume I'm not going to have any power available. So I have to have things that I could preserve and keep without power long term. I mean, I could keep my fridge and my freezer going for a month or 2 on generator, but after the fuel runs out, you know, and I've eaten all that, what other kind of stuff could I have and have stocked up to be able to eat? All right, this is Tom, your Frugal Prepper. I'll talk to y'all later.